and think. Stop and think. You have to run for your life everywhere, but you don't know it.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Toward a Quality of Life. Thank you for tuning in this evening. And tonight, I'm going to be talking about the whole big matter of energy that is so prevalent in media, so prevalent in the public mind as we pay those higher gas prices, as we pay those higher fuel prices for heating our homes, etc. And I hate to keep a lot of what I'm going to say about energy interfaces, of course, with matters of the environment, matters of the kind of air we're breathing, the water we're having, the quality of life we're living, the nature of the life that we've built around ourselves. And I hate to have to keep coming back to environment so often, wishing instead to explore, for example, matters of psychology, matters of philosophy, matters of culture. But of course, the environment comes in over and over again, every minute, every second, every day, as a matter of life and death, as a matter of urgent crisis. We can all go to hell in a handbasket. We can all asphyxiate ourselves, develop more cancer, get more respiratory diseases, have days where the weather is not proper, increasingly so, exponentially so, mathematically so, and in a physical universe where 1 + 1 = 2, where cause has an effect and where every effect has a cause. And tonight, again, our cause is for the environment, and our cause that we're talking about, the effect on environment, is that of energy. Now, energy, talking about oil especially, which is the main focus and form of energy that we use, although nuclear power is very heavily used, as well as coal. However, I believe most of our energy in the world, in any major capacity, comes from oil. And of course, you know that oil is drilled for in this country, in the ocean floor, in the ground in some areas, in countries of the Middle East, in countries of Africa, in countries of South America, virtually in countries everywhere around the world, some of them being very famously known for how much oil they have and how dependent their economies are on oil. Now, the oil itself is traded in international markets, some of them in Europe, some of them in other countries, and certainly right here in our own markets in New York on the New York Mercantile Exchange. The oil is traded both as a spot price oil, what the going rate is for a barrel of oil at any given moment in time here, and it could be different here than it could be some other place in the world, depending on what quality of oil. There are many different kinds of oil, many different qualities, and they end up having different uses or being more or less valuable for particular uses. And these kinds of oils, grades of oils, and types of oils are listed on spot prices to be bought and shipped. Shipping and the difficulty of shipping also figures into how much the price of oil is going to cost. Different political features, strikes, and so on might figure into how the price of oil is charged. And different spot prices around the world can be charged for oil, are charged for oil at any given time. Also, for oil around the world, there are markets that deal in the future price of oil, futures markets, which list how much the oil is expected to be going to, depending on factors such as political problems, refinery problems, strike problems, tanker problems, shipping problems, any number of problems that can happen. And of course, different amounts of productivity by different countries versus lesser amounts, and so on, so on. Very complicated matter. It's not just merely a simple thing of like it's told, supply and demand per se. Just such a simple thing as that. And so oil is listed on markets and bought and sold both in terms of the actual commodity here and now, on the spot market, the physical commodity, and the futures. It's bought and sold in terms of future price to be paid, depending on these factors that I've mentioned. And so the markets, these markets that we love to talk about in a laissez-faire, in a capitalist economy, as we like to call ourselves so much, this price of oil and this regulation of how much oil there is and how much it's going to cost are very well managed, as has been pointed out so often, by the natural contingencies of the marketplace. If more people need oil and there's just not enough of it, or the shipping costs are greater, or the quality of it is less, or politics are keeping some of the oil off the market and so on, prices will reflect that. And when refineries build up capacities, such that always happens in a supply-demand economy, in a capitalist economy, you build up an amount, and you build it up because it's needed, and then when it gets to be filled, it usually goes overboard such that you have too much, and so there becomes what's known as a glut, and the prices tend to pull backwards. And of course, we also have factors, however, that economies which call themselves capitalist are no longer truly laissez-faire, nor maybe were they ever really, inasmuch as corporations which own the oil are more and more consolidated and conglomerated together, and can very easily themselves be a functional form of a cartel, not just the people who own oil in the oil-producing countries, but the people, well, they are the people who own oil in the oil-producing countries, only we don't typically think of them as the sort of target people that we might scapegoat regarding the oil. The major corporations such as Exxon and Amoco and British Petroleum, they are the owners of the oil in conjunction with governments and private persons in countries such as Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, and so on. And these people, of course, are so consolidated, and the trend has been ever larger consolidations of that industry as well as others, that other effects of how these prices are arranged can certainly be a matter of the consolidation of this market sort of being tied up by groups of fewer and fewer players in a tighter and tighter consortium. You'll remember when Valdez happened several years ago, that most horrible watershed turning point, when a big part of Alaska was brutally destroyed, and so much harm was done to animals whom we love so dearly. You remember that as the animals lay dying, burning with the oil all over them, and as the oil kept just spreading everywhere, the corporation Exxon, who was responsible for the tanker coming in through the straits, did not immediately come to the rescue, did not immediately deploy all its resources from around the world to contain that oil spill. It was a matter of many hours before they acted upon finally, even though the government was demanding that they come forward, before they started to try to manage that oil spill, which just goes to show you the amount of leverage oil companies have in how they go about their business. So this is sort of a short version of what the oil market is all about. And the oil is being shipped constantly all over the world, and there are thousands upon thousands of oil spills, which is Another problem, many ships, most I would say, do not have double-hulled aspects to them which could contain a spill into another hull in case a leakage occurred. Many are old and decrepit. They're not run by proper crew. They go through straits such as the one up at Valdez, which are very difficult to negotiate. They might not have properly trained people negotiating the big tankers. Thousands and thousands of spills of oil occur constantly around the world. You remember also during the Iraqi war when a lot of oil went into the Persian Gulf, and we never got the benefit of the pictures of all that spoilage from the Iraqi war, perpetrated both by Saddam Hussein causing oil to spill, and the United States bombing tankers full of oil causing the oil to spill. So, oil on the market will take care of it. In theory, if anywhere should be looking, if anyone should be looking for the price of oil to go up, down, change, be different, we should be looking towards this market that is supposed to be elastic. The oil market is an elastic market. It is supposed to respond to changes, and you can bet your bottom dollar, your bottom dollar, no pun intended, that as more oil is needed and not enough oil supposedly is on the market, that more capacity will be coming online. More capacity will be coming online, and more refineries will be being built. We're told we don't have enough refineries because of the slack periods when what we had was more than ample, and the cost of making all this manufacturing facility was prohibitive against what it would gain us in the long run. Now, there's plenty of oil just as it is from the countries around the world, but the companies are taking this opportunity to push for a decrease in regulations to bring down the barriers that are trying to protect the environment against the spills, against the pollution in the water, against the devastation of the land areas, against the damage to animals, and against even the very burning of the oil, which causes a whole other problem to our air. All these regulations, which by common sense and some intelligence have been put into place, are being pushed against by the people whose economic concerns, no offense to them, we all push for our economic concerns, by the people whose economic concerns are to get more benefits and move ahead and make even greater amounts of money and arrangements around the industry that they are intricately involved in. But the market should be more than able to take care of this in theory and in practice. There are spot markets, there are future markets, there are amounts of oil, there is oil ready to be shipped, there is oil being shipped, there are orders being made by people, and the markets can take care of it. If there is such a demand for oil that more is needed, more will be pumped, more will be put out to the market. And if people are holding back oil, that is in synchrony, if I dare say collusion, with each other to manage the price of oil. And that's as far as we should have to look. And the markets are more than able. Let's look at the kind of profits that oil companies make. Oil companies on the order of magnitude such as Exxon can make in 1/4 profit, 1/4 of the year, can make 4 quarters to a year, can make $3 to $4 billion in profit alone. We don't have to worry about the markets. We don't have to worry about the markets and what they have to do and how they have to proceed to be able to provide us with adequate oil. The question is, do we even want that adequate oil? Do we even want that extra oil? Do we even want to keep pumping and destroying and keep maximizing? But worse than that, do we want the United States federal government to step in and be involved in helping these very lucrative, extraordinarily wealthy enterprises that have total control and ability to achieve their ends and make enormous profits and deliver oil? Do these kinds of concerns need help? Now, before I even get into the question of whether such concerns would even need a tiny speck of help, including on bringing down regulations, except to give them a carte blanche ticket to go and do as they will at the expense of our quality of life, our God-given earth, our very nature and environment and health and security that we need to live. Now let's just look at what kind of emissions come from the burning of for example, fossil fuels. And fossil fuels include coal, oil, and natural gas. Natural gas being one of the products in the ground together with oil. Carbon dioxide is released when fossil fuels are burned. It's a greenhouse gas, and it's a major contributor to global warming. I'm getting this information from the N-Star Electric Company, sent with an electric bill describing some of the facts about electricity and how power is made. Nitrogen oxides come out when fossil fuels and biomass, which is wood and any kind of plant matter being burned, and fossil fuels, when they're burned at high temperatures, they contribute to acid rain, ozone, the kind of ozone that is not good for us, otherwise known as smog, the ozone that hangs in the air that you can see when you're riding on the highway, and you can just look out and see. When you go to Los Angeles, you can just see the ceiling above you. You don't even have a sky. When you go to Istanbul, the air is just black. When you go to Czechoslovakia, the smog, it may cause respiratory illness in children with frequent high-level exposure. Oh, it might. You know, this kind of stuff in the air might cause more of a problem to your breathing than it might otherwise have. It also contributes to depriving oxygen to lakes and coastal waters, which destroys fish and other animal life. And we already know the horrible stories of frogs dying, fish dying, other kinds of the coral reefs dying, other kinds of plant life dying, animal life dying. For this and other causes, other pollutants in the water, not only deprivation of oxygen. Then we have sulfur dioxide is formed when fuels containing sulfur are burned, which are mostly coal and oil. And the health effects with this are asthma, respiratory illness, aggravation of any cardiovascular disease you have, and of course, why not even causing it if you don't have it. And it combines with water and oxygen in the atmosphere to form acid rain, which raises the acid level of lakes and streams and also accelerates the decay of buildings and monuments. You know, there are some tracts of forest in some of our states that are burned out from acid rain raining on them. The trees are burned down to nothing. Their life gone out of them from acid rain raining down on them. Acid rain kills water, kills the natural constitution of water as a life environment for whatever life it sustains. Okay, so these are the emissions, the emissions from burning of oil, burning of coal, burning of wood even, which we've largely come away from in modern times, although a lot of wood is still burnt in certain areas. But back to now, besides all these bad effects and the spills that continue in the thousands annually around the world, and the diesel pollution that is pouring into the air in cities around the world. China is a mess with oil burning, with fossil fuel pollution. China is a mess as it industrializes at a very fast pace. Some of the bare true facts about using this kind of energy with the question, do we want to use more? So we have so many serious consequences from the burning of fossil fuel and from using oil, which leads any half-intelligent person to say, should I be burning so much oil? Never mind the focus on, I have to get more oil somehow. It doesn't matter where I get it. Let me drill it. Let me believe what people are saying. Let me think I have a crisis in oil, which a minute ago I didn't have. Let me disregard understanding how the markets for oil work. Let me disregard the enormous wealth of the oil market concerns and understand the fact that markets are self-regulating. In spite of that, they are literally self-regulating, literally conglomerating too much for anybody's own welfare or good if you look at the greater good, but that markets, profit, stock markets, options, futures, spot markets, prices, physical product, future cost of a product are all coming out in the wash. They all take care of themselves, as we've been so often told that the market takes care of itself. And this is a prime example of a market which doesn't need help, which will be able to produce more oil is necessary, and have a glut of oil from overproducing, which brings us back to coming perhaps to not enough oil, and so forth and so on, and taking all the measures as they work out economically. This is a beautiful market as an illustrative case of how economics in a capitalist system should work. This is a perfect example of a market that can all resolve within itself if the behavior within the market goes according to the rules of commerce and doesn't become so aggrandized and so altogether a block of fixed proportions, such that the prices and the means and so forth are more controlled than they should be, but not for reasons of not for reasons that humans can't control, but for reasons where intentionally measures are taken in effect over time that result effectively in making a more stagnant picture and one that's less responsive to the dynamics of what should be going on in the market. So the point about the oil markets is, don't cry for me, Argentina, no pun intended. The oil markets do not need any help. We need help. The oil markets do not need help. And we're talking again about a commodity that is so devastating in its use to the world at large, no matter where you're talking about fossil fuel being used. The last thing that is necessary is that the federal government would come in and have to engineer some kind of policy, have to tell this capitalist market, elastic and flowing and more than able to adjust itself and make more money and do whatever it does in the infrastructure and the shipping and the organization of its petroleum concerns, that the federal government would come in and have to help this all-powerful, all-knowing, all-able enterprise to do anything is a shocking, shocking development. You know, you might say, in theory, should the government give welfare to anybody? Should the government be involved in policies about anybody? And you might come up with the answer, no, the government should keep its nose out of every kind of thing. Well, if that's what you believe, the last place the government should be making its business felt is in the all-powerful industry of oil, which decidedly does not need help, which may want help to move down the regulations, may see this as a great opportunity for further profit, to perpetrate the propaganda that more oil is needed, that an economy depends on oil, and that oil is where we're going in the future, and we haven't got enough of it, and just let people get worked up in the short run thinking, oh my goodness, let's drill, I've got to have some oil, never understanding, hey, do we want more oil to begin with? Let's look at what are we talking about more oil, and why isn't the oil delivery system working flexibly the way it should? And it will all come out in the wash if it is working flexibly the way it should, that there is nothing to worry about. And the last place that any money, any funding, any subsidies, any programs, any incentives, financial and otherwise, should be given would be to the oil industry, of all the places to be doing favors. Now this comes out of philosophical networks that have told us for a long time the government belongs out of our business. The government should not be the one making policy for how economies work or for how people behave. And here we come into the all-powerful oil industry with plans that are going to support it, give it in effect some kind of subsidies and incentives, is so ludicrous, and have a campaign of trying to make people believe that this is necessary, we're in a crisis, this is how we should go. Now, if we had our thinking caps on, the first thing we would realize is we don't want more oil, we want less oil, and that's where we want the focus to be. We want less energy use, less energy consumption altogether, whatsoever, period. And the amounts by which we could change what our consumption is if we were using our intelligence is so vast, the percentages are way over 50% from what we are now. And of course, as you know, it's often said in world circles that the United States uses oil and food and lumber and all kinds of resources proportionately way more per capita than any other country in the world. So the United States, unfortunately, is and should be the focus of how energy is going to be used, what energy means to a culture, and what has to be the situation into the future regarding energy, fossil fuel, etc. We've lost our marbles. We've gone nuts to just try to go crazy to say we're going to go get more energy wherever we can get it. We've gone nuts. And we've gone crazy if we think we've got to give people special favors, people that can make, corporations that can make $3 and $4 billion profit in a quarter, that we've got to help them so that we can have more energy. Besides oil, as I said, there's coal, and there are other kinds of energies. The other main one, horrible one as energy goes, nuclear power. Spoken of now as though, oh, what's the problem? Nuclear power. And we all know that the waste from nuclear power cannot be contained. We also know that nuclear power plants are put on the coasts of water areas, and that the water from these areas are used to flush the plants such that the temperature of the water can change from being used as coolant. And where is all the water put that is used to circulate around the nuclear power plants, let alone the solid waste. And where is it put? As a matter of fact, I'm not even paying that close attention these days to where is all this nuclear waste. I know some of it, much of it is on some of our military sites. A lot of nuclear waste is just festering. It's festering. I know some of it has been put in barrels in the ocean, which of course are degrading or degraded already. Nuclear power, a very terrible thing, a very terrible thing. And the risk of one accident and life is a physical event. To say that in a physical life something can't happen is so foolish. And when you have a risk so great, you just avoid it at all costs when you understand what would happen were there to be a nuclear accident. And then, of course, there are emissions in normal operations, such as submarines. What happened, and now we learned that that Russian submarine in which many men died at the bottom of the ocean, I think in the Baltic Sea, that it had nuclear power, radioactivity on it. We learned that satellites fall with their radioactivity wherever they fall. Many other things go on unreported with radioactivity going into the environment, radioactivity causing molecules and compounds to behave in fashions irregular to the natural world as we know it. So this whole matter of energy, we're going crazy for energy, and not understanding that there's much more than meets the eye to the price of energy and what the energy markets are really all about, and the grandest folly that the United States government would be stepping in to help companies that produce energy or produce the infrastructure for there being able to be energy gotten out of the ground or water. Folly beyond comparison. And of course, one of the places that we're told we must drill, we all know, here in this country, is in our sacred reservation of Anwar. And a big push is being made to go up to Alaska and cut a road through in the wintertime, ice it over, and do the drilling then, and then I guess replant it or make it disappear. Everything will be done underground supposedly, and you won't see it once the initial construction is done. This is sacrilege. There is no reason to go any further, to do any more polluting, to do any more destroying of habitats of the natural environment. There's no reason. The emphasis has got to be on using less energy and saying, hey, wait a minute, how come we're just going crazy trying to devour more and more energy, exploiting everywhere? What are we going to have? Total devastation? Are we going to go for miles and see trees cut down and oil rigs and sludge in the ocean and pathways made through natural habitats and animals that are all disturbed because they need huge expanses and no humans to come near them in the ideal, like the grizzly bear? The grizzly bear will let you know when you're very far away from him that you are not welcome. The grizzly bear, for example, needs huge amounts of territory, as does the polar bear, unobtruded territory where humans never come. What a hoax. Now, people often say, hey, not only that, oil that we're getting out of Alaska right now is being shipped to Japan, which is really neither here nor there, because it really is one world, whether we like it or not, and one world economy, and it's a shame that all this shipping of oil is going on to begin with. It's a shame that these tankers are at seas without proper protection and going through straits where they don't have proper negotiators. And that all these oil spills are occurring to begin with. We ought to be saying, how can we have a moratorium on further world rape of the environment, further use and destruction, further devastation and more emissions, more pollution in the water, more emissions in the air from using energy here and in China and in Russia and in Africa. Just recently I read there are terrible dust storms occurring in China and Africa. And the dust is so that it's a pollution to the air, and it's happening because the environment is disturbed. The rain doesn't come when it should. The heat is either too hot, the cold is too cold, the gradation between the two is all disturbed, and nature gets out of balance. Places turn to dust bowls, places turn to floods with frequencies and intensities that are off the normal curve. Now, if you believe in the Bible, and I don't follow the Bible, it's fine, but I'm not saying that because I follow it. But so many people do. If you believe in the Bible, especially the Second Testament, you are told to be stewards of the earth. That does not mean to rape the earth. That does not mean to go crazy, and that does not mean to just live like a glutton and have 50 million lights burning and engines guzzling and machines burning and so forth and so on, and try to maximize your comfort, not just while you need the comfort, but wasting it all over the place, which is how we are living in modern times. And while I'm on the subject of oil, though it's not about oil, but about the environment, broadly speaking, let's not forget about our national parks, too, of how we want to conserve not just those that are reserved as national parks, but all the land that is not yet developed. How wonderful it is to go by areas that have trees we need to breathe, trees that help with metabolizing the carbon dioxide, taking it out of the air and giving us back oxygen to breathe, and the beauty for the eye. We can't just make it a whole concrete jungle or a whole tarred over area and a whole drilled area and a whole excavated area. And people that say there's a lot of land left and we have to protect every inch and we have to stop using so much energy. And nobody who's in energy needs any favors about that economically. If anybody needs favors, it's the people that are having to pay so much for their energy, not the solution of taking down barriers to drill for more oil. Now also, when these pollutants are in the atmosphere, such as I described to you before, the carbon dioxides, the nitrogen oxides, the sulfur dioxides causing their diseases, they can also cause cancer. In my thinking, people would say, where's the research? Well, how are you going to prove that? If you're putting in pollutants, there are so many more pollutants than just these that enter our body every day that aren't right for our body, plastics that mingle with our body, etc. But if these things are not natural to the body, they're not wanted to the body, and when they come in, they have to be handled by the body. And why should not these toxins, if you will, be causing cells to go astray? They certainly don't help the immune system. They certainly don't help overall health. So why not think that these things are involved in cancer? How about carbon monoxide? Why not think these things are not involved in cancer, breathing that every day? And isn't there just money in cancer for people getting sick? Why aren't we worried about what we're breathing, what the water is like, what we're drinking, what the fish are swimming in? Why aren't we worried about that when we think about health? There's money in bad health. There's money in cancer. If you have cancer, you're going to buy drugs. I'm not saying you necessarily should or would, but most people will go and buy expensive drugs. You'll take expensive treatments. There's money in cancer. Why aren't we worried? Why is not the National Cancer Society worried about all the things that are unhealthy for the body to breathe and touch and eat and so forth, instead of trying to do research to figure it out? Why can't we use our intelligence? And where are we going to see expositions on how wonderful the environment is, the natural one, and how important it is to preserve it, and what a great sorrow it is every time some tracts of land are just mowed down, trees are mowed down, animals are pushed and of necessity die off, get killed, and suffer great stress. The pathos of foxes. We have animals now in small towns in Massachusetts that are coming into people's yards, very unusual animals, because there's so much development. They have no place to go. There is a natural pathos to this. Were we to let our hearts be open, we would see how pathetic this condition is, that animals are foraging in areas where they're not welcome, where there is no food for them, and where of necessity they've been pushed. Foxes, what are we just let them die. Who cares? Who thinks about the turtles? Who thinks about the foxes? Who thinks about the skunks? Who cares? Let's go. Devastate, destroy, rape. We've got to do more. We need more energy. Let's help it. Let's have the government do some funding of it. Let's even help this whole manic situation. We're choking the planet. We're choking life off. And should we not be the leaders of how we have to change our ways, and what's happened to our more rational thinking of the 70s, when we weren't in such a computerized frenzy of sheer economic thrust on a treadmill, just with blinders going about our daily business, not taking time to reflect what's going to really make us happy, what kind of weather we require, what makes the weather like it is. And of course you've heard so much about global warming, which is only one. I mean, there's also going to be global cooling, where the temperature gets too cold, all kinds of global irregularities due to nuclear power, due to fossil fuels, and due to the many other kinds of unwelcome elements and compounds escaping into the atmosphere and into the water. Now you also know that there was an agreement with some world countries, I think in Japan, maybe 2 years ago or so, I can't quite recall, to curb emissions. And the U.S. participated in that. And I guess the U.S. was supposed to take the bulk of the curbing because they do the vast bulk of emitting. Now the federal government representative has decided we're not having treaties like that. We're out of those. We're energy. We're going for energy. We're going to break down barriers. We're going to go drill where the animals are. We're going to release more emissions. We're going to make more energy. We're going to sell more energy. We're going to buy more energy. We're going to find more energy. That's how we're going to go. And not only that, we're going to participate in the economic help of these extraordinarily affluent concerns that control the energy. Let's look at where we get our energy. Again, reading just from NSTAR's leaflet that it put into the electric bill, it gave a table of where we get electric power in this area from, as far as sources go. The biggest source is nuclear power, probably Pilgrim Power Plant. There should be no nuclear power. Radioactivity destroys biological tissue, period. The second most is natural gas, which, like I said, is in the ground together with oil, sometimes more, sometimes less. The third is oil. And then there are two smaller ones. Coal is pretty significant, and imported power. I don't know what that one is. Now, some people say that gains have been made in how coal can be processed, and that's true. But to really have state-of-the-art plants to process, to burn the coal efficiently is extraordinary investment required. And I doubt that there are too many state-of-the-art coal power plants online. And like I say, just energy, 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 give me more energy, that's a dead-end street. That's a crazy way to go. That's stupid. How come, why can we have cars that gobble up more energy and just make them gobble? As we go into the future and we need more energy and it costs more and we're going crazy on how to get it, how come we can have automobiles that use more and more gas? I went to look at automobiles recently, and the automobiles of today in certain categories eat more gas than the automobiles of 10 years ago in a similar category. We are not very intelligent. And some people say, well, now that we've got the big SUVs, and I don't know why we have them, I know people like them, but what's the point? Are people hauling trash? Are they moving furniture? Why do we have these big vehicles? Yes, they are protective, but if we all had smaller vehicles, then we wouldn't have to be worried about bigger vehicles. What about buildings? What about a national transportation system before we even talk about buildings? How come we can't make rapid transit, clean, efficient, even electromagnetic railway systems that run like on over an electromagnetic field above the ground, for example? Why can't we have fast, efficient, clean train service hauling people in large numbers quickly to all spots so that we don't even need one person, one vehicle? You can always just get somewhere fast by a national transportation system. But one that is ergonomic and engineered to be humane and people-friendly and give dignity to people, not pack them in like sardines. Let's be thinking about how we want our culture to be, how we want to live, what we want to breathe, what we want to drink. Now, buildings, high-rises. Why do we permit to build high-rises that have to soak all that energy, that in the hot sun get a pounding, get heated up, and then require air conditioners to work against even unnatural levels of heat because of the concentration through the glass and the chrome and so on? Why are we building like that? Buildings that don't have natural ventilation. That's pretty stupid. Why are we even building more buildings, more concrete, less earth, less plants, less vegetation? I just noticed, too, how my vehicle gives off so much heat in the underbody as it runs, just as a natural and good condition. An awful lot of heat is generated in present-day cars, more than was in the past with the way that they're made, adding heat. Not only is it going to be very hot some days this summer And we've already seen this year, we're in the year 2001, we're in the month of June. We've already seen this year extraordinarily high temperatures in California, Arizona, New Mexico. We're going to see some here in Massachusetts, I'm sure. Not in any normal pattern, irregular pattern to be sure. So we'll have the very hot heat, and then we'll have all the equipment running that is generating more heat on top of that, and then the equipment running to cool the heat that's being generated and the heat that is too hot from environmental destruction. Well, we are at the end of our time. Final words. Let's put on our thinking caps. Stop raping the earth. Stop doing things that cause more harm to the natural life, to the animal life, to the human life, that cause more pollution. That cause us to be heading for a surefire, worse future, guaranteed. More heat, more extreme cold, more pollution, more desperation for so-called energy resources, more habitat destruction. Let's put on our thinking caps. Let's think intelligently. Let's understand. This is not rational, and it's not in our best interests. And for the time being, let the markets do what they do, and let's keep the government out of people's affairs, especially when it comes to economics such as those of the oil industry, where favors do not need to be given. Thank you very much. I hope you'll notice some trees and appreciate them, maybe plant some, and certainly preserve them. And let's have a greener and more friendly life and lifestyle. Thank you, and I'll see you again.
A purposeful agenda, propose a mix and tincture to make you want to try. Concentrate a story, no sharing any glory. The sad contributory is mud in my eye. Pay to drink the soda, that in your hand you hold her. I pay to get a tolda, to drink the very cola. In which your butt you hold her, the brain you pay to mold her. To please to get a solder, the green, the blue, the golder. You're bold, your can, oh soda. The mutilated brother, a breathing with disease. The quality and costa is what we are, we're lost about pollution costa. Toxicity our bossa, a got to be a limit, a drive to waste inhibit, prevent our place prohibit, let life our planet live it. to be busted. What is done cannot be trusted when money is the only goal. Sugar in every bowl. Baby, I love you when it's convenient for me. Baby, I love you when I'm in your vicinity. Baby, I love you, yeah, money in my pocket. I need a place to hide your door, don't lock it. With your deodorant, mouth wash, and toothpaste. If you make a mistake, then I'll tell you they say. Both my feeling that by someone I am wanted. In the arms to which I stray. It's not hard to find love. It's hard to make love wherever you are. It's hard to discipline yourself, to listen to everything around you. Baby, I love you when you're so far away. Baby, I love you when I don't see you every day. One last kiss, world and sea. And when we meet again, I'll look at you and pray. Baby, I love you. Ooh, I love you. Ooh, I love you. Hey, I love you. I gotta go now, baby. I'm kinda slow now, baby. Telephone calls to make, baby. People call me. But when I put my hand in your tight pants, I say, oh, baby. Hey, baby. Baby.